Hey, if you're a beekeeper, there's a really good chance you'll run into European foulbrood at some point. Now, it can look pretty scary when you see it in the hive, but the good news is, with the right know-how, it's totally manageable. So today, we're going to decode it for you.
So you're heading into spring, right? Your colony's starting to build up and you're getting excited for a strong season. But what if something's quietly attacking the very next generation of your bees? Well, that is the exact threat posed by European foulbrood. And today, we're going to give you the tools you need to spot it and to stop it.
Okay, first things first, what exactly are we even dealing with here? European foulbrood, we'll just call it EFB, is a bacterial disease. Now, that might sound a little scary, but here's the most important thing to know right from the start. Unlike some other really nasty brood diseases, strong colonies can often beat EFB all on their own. Let's get into the specifics. EFB is caused by a bacterium called Melissococcus plutonius, and what it does is it targets the really young honeybee larvae. It infects them and kills them before the worker bees even get a chance to cap the cell. That's why it's often called a stress disease, because it tends to pop up in the spring, when the adult bee population might be a little low compared to all the brood they're trying to take care of. All right, let's put ourselves in the moment. You're out in the bee yard, you've just cracked open a hive, and you've got a feeling something's just not right. How can you be sure it's EFB? Well, this next section is basically your field guide. We're going to show you exactly what to look for and even what to smell for. The number one, most unmissable sign of EFB is seeing dead or dying larvae just twisted up inside their cells. Healthy larvae are supposed to be plump, pearly white, and curled up in that perfect C shape. Infected larvae, well, they look totally different. The infection follows a pretty clear visual path. First, you'll see a color change. They go from that healthy, pearly white to a kind of sickly yellow, which then darkens to brown or even black. The larvae will lose their nice plump shape and look all twisted and contorted. And a classic giveaway, something to really look for, is when you can see their little breathing tubes, the trachea, as these really noticeable white lines against their dark bodies. Eventually, the whole thing just dries down into a rubbery scale that, and this is important, the bees can actually remove and clean out themselves pretty easily. Don't forget to use your nose, too. It's actually a really powerful diagnostic tool. Now, you might not smell anything if it's just a light infection, but if the disease has really taken hold, you could notice a distinct, sour, kind of yeast-like smell when you open that hive. So trust your senses. If it smells off, you definitely want to take a closer look at the brood. Now, here is a super critical point. You have to know how to tell EFB apart from its much, much more destructive cousin, American foulbrood. This is where something called the matchstick test comes in. If you poke a dead larva with a twig or a matchstick, with EFB, the guts will be watery or pasty. It might make a short, weak little thread that breaks right away. AFB, on the other hand, is glue-like. It creates a long, ropey, goopy thread that can stretch for several centimeters. Getting this right is absolutely crucial for deciding how to treat it. Okay, so you've done your inspection, you've made a diagnosis, it's EFB. So, what now? Well, the good news is you've got options. They range from simple adjustments in how you manage the hive to, in some cases, chemical treatments. Let's walk through the playbook. And this brings us to probably the single most important principle when you're dealing with EFB. It is not always a crisis that needs medication. A strong, populous, well-fed colony has this amazing ability to just clean house and resolve the infection all on its own. Your best defense is always just good beekeeping. So how do you actually do that? Well, your main goal is to create a really high ratio of nurse bees to brood. You can do this by just taking out any frames that aren't completely covered with bees. This concentrates your workforce, right? It lets them better warm, feed, and most importantly, clean out all those infected cells. A lot of times, this technique alone is enough to turn the tide. Now, if the infection is really bad and these management techniques just aren't cutting it, antibiotics can be an effective tool. But, and this is a big but, it's so important to remember that their use is regulated differently everywhere. You have to check your local laws and regulations before you ever proceed with a chemical treatment. So where treatment is needed and allowed, you've got a few options. The most common ones these days are tylosin and terramycin, and they're both applied as a powder mixed with sugar. Notice how specific the dosage and treatment schedules are. Following those is critical for it to work. We also have sodium sulfathiazole listed here, but that's really an older treatment that was mixed with syrup, and it's hardly ever recommended today for reasons we're about to get into. So how do you actually apply these powdered treatments the right way? It's pretty simple, but the details really matter. After you mix the antibiotic with powdered sugar, you just sprinkle it along the top edges of the frames in the brood chamber. The key here is to avoid dusting it right onto the open brood or the bees. You want the house-cleaning bees to encounter it naturally and spread it around as they do their jobs, rather than dumping it right on the sensitive larvae. And hey, here is a massive pro tip that will save you a ton of trouble. While some of the old school methods involve mixing antibiotics into liquid sugar syrup, modern best practices say don't do it. Research has actually shown that mixing these treatments with liquid feed can seriously reduce how effective they are. Powdered sugar is definitely the way to go. So, we've talked about diagnosis and we've talked about treatment, but you know what's even better than all of that? Prevention. Let's shift gears and focus on the simple, proactive habits that can keep EFB from ever becoming a problem in your apiary in the first place. You know, long-term hive health really just boils down to a few core principles. Good apiary hygiene is just non-negotiable. That means sterilizing your equipment and rotating out that old dark comb that can hold on to pathogens. It also means being really disciplined about never, ever moving frames from a sick or questionable hive to a healthy one. And in the end, it all comes back to that golden rule: just focus on keeping your colony strong, full of bees, and headed by a really vigorous queen. So as we wrap all this up, I want to leave you with this question. This isn't just about reacting to a problem you see today. It's about building resilience for tomorrow. By understanding the signs of EFB and focusing on keeping strong, healthy colonies, you are fortifying your bees against whatever challenges next season and the season after that might bring.